A self-appointed HOA Karen named Cheryl plastered photos of John Baker's young daughters around the neighborhood, falsely branding their porch as a violation. Drunk on fake authority, she had no idea she was targeting the family of Supreme Court Justice Caroline Baker. But when Caroline stepped in, armed with federal law and a mother's resolve, the tables turned fast. Just wait until you see how this petty campaign ended and why true justice had the final word. John Baker cherished Sunday mornings like sacred rituals. Their colonial house stood proudly in the heart of a quiet Virginia historic district, framed by towering oaks and rows of red brick. The broad wraparound porch was where his twin daughters, Emma and Lily, loved to sprawl out with their sidewalk chalk, filling the planks with rainbows and doodles as John brewed fresh coffee inside. That morning, with the kettle just starting to whistle, he glanced through the front window and froze. A figure stood motionless at the curb, Cheryl Downs, phone in hand, lens aimed straight at the porch and at Emma and Lily. John blinked in disbelief. The woman had been a thorn in the neighborhood's side for months. 2 weeks earlier, she'd announced the creation of a so-called Neighborhood Improvement Committee, claiming it was sanctioned by the HOA. It wasn't. The real HOA had formally removed Cheryl 2 years ago after numerous complaints about harassment and overreach. But that hadn't stopped her. Armed with a lanyard sporting a badge she'd clearly printed herself and a folder of self-written compliance notices, she prowled the streets, nitpicking everything from mailbox paint to potted plants. John stepped onto the porch, voice sharp but controlled. "Excuse me, why are you filming my kids?" Cheryl didn't flinch. Her mouth curled into a smirk, as if she'd been waiting for confrontation. "Documenting non-compliant porch clutter," she replied coolly, "under new neighborhood guidelines." John's pulse spiked. "There are no new guidelines," he said firmly. But Cheryl kept recording, eyes glued to her screen. When John moved to shield the girls and block her view, she barked back, "You're interfering with official HOA business." The absurdity of her words was nearly laughable, if it weren't so unsettling. John ushered his daughters inside, heart pounding. He couldn't shake the unease. A stranger, one with no legal authority, had filmed his children without consent, under a false claim of power. That evening the whispers began. A neighbor forwarded a screenshot from a private Facebook group called Neighborhood Violators Watch. There they were, Emma and Lily, smiling, chalk-stained, unaware they'd been turned into some twisted example. John stared at the screen, stomach sinking. His daughters' faces had been broadcast without permission, labeled as part of a supposed violation. And Cheryl? She wasn't done. The situation was about to spiral far beyond a Sunday morning. By Tuesday morning, what began as a petty act had turned into something far more sinister. John returned from dropping the girls at school only to be greeted by a neighbor waving a bright yellow flyer, eyes wide. "You need to see this," she whispered. His breath caught as he unfolded the paper. Across the top, in bold black letters, "Unsafe play area violates community aesthetic." And beneath it, photos of Emma and Lily from their Sunday morning play, pulled straight from Cheryl's video. The flyer had been posted at the entrance of the neighborhood and on several community bulletin boards. John's face burned with rage. His children, 8 years old, were being publicly targeted and shamed. He stormed inside, clutching the flyer, where his wife Caroline had just returned home after a grueling week in D.C. on the Supreme Court circuit. She was barely through unpacking when John placed the paper before her. She read it once, then again, slower. Her jaw tightened. The change in her expression was almost imperceptible, but John knew that look. It was the look of a judge reading a clear violation of federal law. "John," she said quietly, voice low and cold, "this crosses into federal territory." Caroline was no ordinary homeowner. Behind her calm exterior stood one of the sharpest legal minds in the country, one who had authored opinions on privacy law and child protections. And Cheryl? She had no idea whom she had provoked. She believed she was harassing an average suburban family, maybe a contractor and his stay-at-home wife. She had no clue that Justice Caroline Baker was the one reviewing her actions now, with a prosecutor's eye and a mother's heart. Caroline wasted no time. That night, while John tucked in the girls with a forced smile, Caroline drafted and filed preliminary motions under Virginia's strict anti-harassment statutes and child privacy protections. She sent formal notices to the neighborhood HOA board documenting the pattern of harassment and the illegal distribution of minors' images. Then she made one more call, this time to a trusted contact within the Federal Cybercrimes Task Force. By morning, an official inquiry into Cheryl's private Facebook group was already underway. And still, Cheryl remained oblivious, pressing further into a fight she had no hope of winning. The next morning, the first cracks in Cheryl Downs' facade appeared. Just after 9 a.m., a pair of unmarked government vehicles pulled quietly into her driveway. Two plainclothes federal agents approached her door, calm, composed, warrant folders in hand. When Cheryl answered, phone already recording, they introduced themselves and presented their documents. Her smirk faltered fast. Impersonating an HOA official? Fraud, under both state and federal statutes. Posting images of minors without parental consent. A violation of child privacy protections, grounds for federal charges. Operating a closed Facebook group for targeted public shaming. A breach of cyber harassment and data privacy laws. For all her bluster, Cheryl was unprepared for real legal consequences. Her voice, once commanding in the neighborhood, now trembled as the agents read through each point. By the time they left, Cheryl knew. The game was no longer hers to control. Word spread like wildfire. Within hours, neighbors who had lived in fear of Cheryl's self-appointed compliance director role began coming forward, many with years' worth of evidence. John's inbox flooded with screenshots of bogus violation notices, emails dripping with veiled threats, and photos Cheryl had taken of other residents without consent. One neighbor, an elderly veteran, forwarded a message where Cheryl had threatened fines for the size of his American flag, completely outside her authority. As the wave of information surged, Caroline acted again. She instructed her court clerk to draft an official public legal notice written with the precision of a Supreme Court opinion. It stated, in no uncertain terms, that Cheryl Downs was under active federal and state investigation. She possessed no legal or official authority within the community. Residents should disregard all past and future claims made under her false title. And then came the line that turned heads across the neighborhood. This matter is being overseen by Justice Caroline Baker of the United States Supreme Court. The notice was posted, legally, on every mailbox, every community board, every entrance gate. By sunset, the air in the neighborhood had shifted. Fear of Cheryl had turned to quiet defiance. And for the first time in months, her so-called authority was reduced to nothing more than a paper badge and an empty title. But the story wasn't over yet, because the final reckoning was still to come. By Friday, the charade Cheryl Downs had built for months came crashing down, swiftly and completely. Federal orders shut down her private Neighborhood Violators Watch Facebook group. The page that had once spread intimidation and shame was now a blank screen, its members removed, its contents preserved as evidence. 3 families, emboldened by Caroline's actions, filed civil lawsuits, each with years of documentation detailing Cheryl's harassment. But perhaps the most immediate blow arrived by courier that same afternoon. A formal restraining order, issued by the court, served directly to Cheryl's hand. The terms were clear. She was permanently barred from filming or contacting John's family or any children in the community under threat of further legal action. Any future attempts to represent herself as a figure of authority within the neighborhood would be met with immediate enforcement. Cheryl had no public comment. For the first time in recent memory, she kept to her home. Windows closed, blinds drawn. But her undoing wasn't finished. That evening, in a special session, the real HOA board convened, this time with a full house of residents in attendance. The vote was unanimous. Effective immediately, Cheryl Downs was permanently banned from attending any neighborhood functions, entering common public areas, or participating in any HOA activities. No more patrols, no more flyers, No more authority, real or imagined. And at the heart of that meeting stood Justice Caroline Baker, poised and reserved. When asked to speak, she rose calmly and addressed the room. No one should fear being filmed while playing with their children on their own property, she said, her voice steady. Let this serve as a warning to anyone abusing fake authority or threatening the privacy of others. It will not be tolerated. The room erupted in quiet applause, a shared release after months of tension. That night, John's phone buzzed nonstop. Text after text poured in from neighbors, words of gratitude, admiration, relief. Many now openly called Caroline a hero for standing where others had felt powerless. And Cheryl? 2 weeks later, under a quiet morning sky, a small for sale sign appeared in front of her house. Without announcement or farewell, she packed her belongings and prepared to leave the neighborhood she had once sought to control. Justice had been served, not by force or outrage, but by the unshakable strength of the law. And on the Baker family's porch, twin girls once again drew chalk rainbows beneath the sun, safe, free, and smiling.